There's a powerful idea that a regime doesn't fall because of an outside attack. It collapses from the inside when its own people just stop being afraid. And that one idea, right there, is the key to understanding everything that's happening in Iran today.
All right, so when you hear the word Iran in the news, what comes to mind? Probably protests, right? Nuclear tensions, a government that's always clashing with the West. But that's just the surface. Behind all those headlines, there's this incredibly complex history that most of us don't know. So in this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain and figure out how Iran went from being a friend of the West to its so-called villain.
If you look at pictures from Iran before 1979, you might do a double take. You'd see women in modern clothes, going to universities, living lives that looked, well, free. And then the Islamic Revolution happened, and it's like a switch was flipped. Almost overnight, everything changed, and the country was plunged into a regime built on fear and religious law.
And I mean, just look at how drastic these changes were. This wasn't a gradual shift, it was a societal earthquake. Suddenly, the hijab was mandatory. The minimum age for a girl to get married was dropped to 9. Women were banned from playing sports. They couldn't even travel outside the country unless their husbands signed off on it. It's hard to even wrap your head around a reversal that fast and that total.
And that brings us right back to today. Because now it's the women of Iran who are on the front lines of a new movement. You see them on social media, burning their hijabs, tearing down pictures of the supreme leader. They're just done. They're fed up with the collapsing economy, the suffocating religious rules, the authoritarian government. That fear we talked about, it's starting to die.
So the billion-dollar question is, how did we get here? This image we have of Iran as an enemy feels like it's been set in stone forever.
But was it always that way?
Well, the answer might actually shock you.
I mean, just look at this contrast. It is night and day. For a huge part of the 20th century, Iran wasn't just not an enemy of the US, it was a critical ally, a key piece on the chessboard. It was considered part of the First World, a gatekeeper for the world's oil supply, and a major wall against the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Getting from that point to this one, well, that's the whole story.
And to really get it, you can't just start the clock in 1979. That revolution didn't happen in a vacuum. You have to rewind and look at this hidden history, which can really break down into 4 key eras that created the Iran we see today.
Let's walk through this, because you can see how one thing leads directly to the next. It kicks off in 1901, when Britain basically got the keys to all of Iran's oil, turning the whole country into its personal gas station. Then, in 1951, there's this moment of hope. A democratically elected leader, Mossadegh, stands up and says, hey, this is our oil, and he nationalizes it. But that hope was crushed just 2 years later when the CIA helped orchestrate a coup, kicked him out, and put the pro-American Shah back in charge. All that anger against foreign meddling just simmered for decades until, boom, 1979, it all boils over. It's like a perfect chain reaction.
Now, the face of that revolution was Ayatollah Khomeini. He'd been exiled for 14 years, and that time away only made people sympathize with him more. The Shah, the guy in power, tried to discredit him, but he made a huge mistake. He didn't attack Khomeini's politics. He attacked his faith. He called him un-Islamic. In a deeply religious country, that completely backfired. It just made Khomeini seem more authentic, like a true spiritual leader fighting a corrupt king.
And get this, once the revolution won, they held a vote. The question was simple: should Iran be an Islamic republic? And an incredible 98.2% of the people voted yes. This wasn't some fringe takeover. You had liberals, students, nationalists. Pretty much everyone was united by one thing. They absolutely despised the Shah, who they saw as an American puppet. In their minds, anything had to be better than that.
But here's the bait and switch. After all that, power wasn't handed back to the people. It was consolidated into the hands of a very small group. The new constitution created this thing called the Guardian Council. It was basically 12 clerics who had absolute final say. They could veto any law, decide who was Islamic enough to even run for office. They held all the cards. The People's Popular Uprising had become a hardcore theocracy.
Okay, so why does all this history matter right now? Because the same things that caused the 1979 revolution are popping up again today, and the similarities are, frankly, kind of spooky. It feels like we're watching a rerun of the same movie.
Just look at these parallels. A leader who's seen as completely disconnected from the people? Check. For both then and now. Protests driven by the youth? Check. Only today, they're also being led by women, which is a massive new factor. An economy in trouble? Back then, it was declining. Today, it's in an absolute freefall, with food prices up over 70%. And the government's response? Crackdowns and secret police then, crackdowns and the so-called morality police now. The echo is deafening.
And every revolution needs a spark, a symbol. For today's movement, that symbol became Mahsa Amini, a young woman who died in police custody, arrested for supposedly wearing her hijab too loosely. Her death ignited the woman life freedom movement. She became a martyr, a face for a whole generation's anger, in the same way Khomeini became the symbol of everything wrong with the Shah's rule.
So let's zoom out. What's the big picture here? Because Iran's story isn't just about Iran. It's a fascinating and pretty brutal case study in geopolitics. It has these universal lessons about power, about foreign meddling, and about what nations will do to protect their interests.
Now, the source material for this explainer points to what it calls the CIA's boiling frog playbook. You know the analogy, right? If you drop a frog in boiling water, it'll jump right out. But if you put it in cool water and slowly turn up the heat, it won't realize it's in danger until it's too late. The theory is that this is how some foreign powers operate. You don't just invade, you slowly turn up the social and political heat. You fund protest movements, you wait for a martyr to galvanize people, and then you just wait for the whole thing to reach its breaking point.
So what are the big lessons we should take away from all this? Well, first, that colonialism never really went away. It just changed its clothes. It's not about planting a flag anymore, it's about controlling resources like oil. Second, as that 1953 coup showed us, foreign intervention almost always plants the seeds for an even bigger crisis down the road. Third, for any nation, self-reliance is absolutely key. And finally, maybe the most important rule in this whole game. In geopolitics, there are no permanent friends. There are only permanent interests.
And that brings us to this chilling and very famous quote from Henry Kissinger. Think about it. The Shah of Iran was America's friend. He was their guy. He did what they wanted. But the second the revolution started and he was no longer useful, he was abandoned. For the Shah, being America's friend wasn't just dangerous, it ended up being fatal. Which leaves us with one final big question to think about. When did Iran's villain origin story really begin? Was it in 1979 with the Islamic Revolution? Or do you have to rewind to 1953 when a foreign power came in and overthrew its democracy? Or maybe, just maybe, you have to go all the way back to 1901 when its most precious resource was essentially taken from them. Where you decide that story begins, well, that changes everything, doesn't it?